What's up, everybody? This is Boldly Nerd, where we talk about pop culture, nerd entertainment, and anything that we want to. Today we are reviewing Game of Thrones Season 7, Episode 3, so stay tuned for my review. So, my name's Oscar Hampton, this is my Game of Thrones review. We're just gonna jump right into it. And the first thing that happens here is we get this meeting between Dany and Jon. I honestly didn't think this meeting was gonna happen right at the beginning of the episode. I thought it was gonna be much later in the episode, maybe like midway, maybe even like very end, they just like, he finally comes into the hall and then it cuts out. But what ends up happening is that Jon lands at Dragonstone right at the beginning of the episode, has a conversation with Tyrion, and meets the dragons immediately. So they're walking up that big staircase, and as they're walking up that big staircase, one of the dragons flies right over Jon, and Jon ducks and he's like, whoa, that is a crazy thing to see. And so he immediately has an interaction with one of the dragons right at the beginning of this episode. Then that cuts to a scene between Varys and Melisandre, and I thought this scene was kind of interesting because they both were kind of threatening each other. I was interesting because you don't see Varys off guard when it comes to what people say to him, and he was very off guard by something that Melisandre said about how she has to come back to Westeros. So I'm not sure what that is going to mean for her character. Let me know that in the comments if you have any predictions. I'd love to hear what you think. So then that cuts finally into the throne room where Daenerys is sitting on that big, huge wooden or glass throne, and her and Jon immediately go and have this conversation about what they need to do to protect the realm. They are obviously at odds in this scene. It's very much them trying to figure out what the other one is about. There's a little bit of humor because in the beginning they list off basically Daenerys' whole resume, and then when it gets to Jon's resume, it's like, Jon Snow, he's king of the north. So that was really interesting, just like to see the differences between them. Obviously you have a character who's done a lot and people keep talking about her accolades, and then you have another character who has done a lot and he's not really worried about stuff like that. He's just worried about doing the best for his people, even though Dany is too, but there's just a different dynamic there. So that ends the conversation and we move on, which in our next scene we see Theon getting saved. Obviously Theon at the end of the last episode, instead of saving his sister, jumps off the boat. I know a lot of people are upset about Theon when it comes to this. I would have been upset with this if this was like season 1 or season 2 when he was just a huge douche. But now it's much different because we've seen him go through like 4 seasons of just literally being tortured, and I'm starting to feel sorry for him. And I understand like he has PTSD, like you can't call it anything like, other than that. So I'm starting to understand why he's making some of these moves. Granted, I didn't like it that much. I thought he should have tried, but you know, that's just the nature of what that condition does to you. So then we cut to Euron bring the sands to Cersei as a gift. And the reason why Euron brings them, which I was shocked about, I actually thought that he was going to go after Tyrion. That made the most sense to me. But he brings them because of the fact that the mother killed Cersei's daughter. So that was the reason why he brought them back as a gift. So he has this grand entrance into the hall. He has a couple back and forths with Jaime because obviously Euron wants the queen's hand, and Jaime obviously is not about that life at all. So we have a couple back and forths between Euron and Jaime, okay? And then finally at the end, Cersei is like, yes, I will marry you at the end of the war. So obviously Cersei being the quote unquote, like she's mad queen status at this point, and it obviously has tricks up her sleeve. She has backup plans and things like that. So it will be interesting to see if that actually plays out, that marriage. But what ends up happening after that is we cut to a scene where Cersei is in a dungeon with the 2 sands, so the mom and the daughter, and the mom and the daughter are tied up across the room from each other. Okay, and what ends up happening in this scene is basically Cersei goes straight up savage, poisons the daughter, and makes the mom watch her daughter get poisoned and die, and not being able to get to her and not being able to do anything about it, which is just a crazy gangster move. Like, apparently there's a scene in one of the books where the Mad King does something like this to characters. I've seen this in a couple reviews, so this is something that they kind of pulled from the books, except for in that case it was actually fire that they used to kill the father instead of the son. So it was different, but there's still the chain link, so anytime one of them moved, they wouldn't be able, there was only a certain distance that they could get to each other, and if they moved either way, they wouldn't be able to reach the other person. So that was a crazy scene to watch. Let me know in the comments what you think about Cersei at this point. Has she officially reached Mad Queen status? What do you think? So then you start to really see how Cersei just doesn't give anything about anything anymore, because it cuts to a sex scene with her and Jaime, and then what ends up happening is they have this like kind of moment where they wake up in the morning, which actually was kind of nice, and there's a knock on the door, and Cersei just goes up to the door and opens it, and one of her hands is there. They see Jaime, and Cersei's just like, I'm a queen, I don't even care anymore, like everybody knows it anyway, like let everybody know. So I thought that that was kind of crazy that she's just in full on, like, this is why I think that she's just in full on straight up mad queen mode right now. She doesn't care. She is in straight honey badger mode right now. She is just that. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens over the rest of this season with Cersei. So then you cut to the next scene, Cersei talking to one of the representatives from the Iron Bank. Obviously, the Lannisters own the Iron Bank a lot of money, and sure enough, playing this character is good old Mycroft Holmes. I was really excited when they showed him. He's getting a lot of cameos in some good British TV, like he's going to be in Doctor Who this Christmas in the Doctor Who special, so it's going to be really interesting to see him and his character, because they teased his character in the next episode too, so I'm going to be interested to see how his character just kind of ties in here. I'm pretty sure it'll be a very minor character, but he's a relatively big actor over there in England, so it'll be interesting to see what his character arc is there for. But obviously he's trying to get money back from the Lannisters. Cersei's like, well, the Lannisters always pay their debts. Obviously she has a plan in the back of her mind of what is going to happen, and that actually starts coming out with the end of this episode and what we see in the trailer for the next episode. So then we see Tyrion advising Jon, which we've seen a little bit before. Tyrion is very, very good at this, and he's now playing both sides because he realizes that both of these people need to work together, especially since that fleet just went down. So he realizes that they need to work together. And he's trying to explain to Jon, being like, look, you came here and demanded help in this war that seems slightly unbelievable. It's a very, very big task to ask of somebody that you have no connection with. So is there something that we could actually do for you, a more reasonable demand? And that reasonable demand that he's pointing at is the dragon glass. So then you see Tyrion talking to Daenerys and being like, let Jon mine the dragon glass. It's of no value to you. You didn't even know it was here. If it could be a step forward in a diplomatic relation between you guys, that could be huge for you guys going future. So what ends up happening is she lets Jon mine the dragon glass in the next scene. So they actually, again, Jon and Daenerys have another conversation. They're outside, they're looking at the dragons. They're just trying to learn a little bit more about each other, which they end up doing. You see each of them kind of warming up a little to the other at this point. And so they have an interesting back and forth, and at the end they talk about letting Jon mine the dragon glass, and Daenerys is like, you can have any of the men that we have at my disposal, so you can do this as quickly as possible. So they're taking those steps forward in diplomatic relations. So we cut from Dragonstone, we go back to Winterfell. Sansa is the Ward of the North right now. She's in charge while Jon is away. And they actually really just kind of showing the development of her character, because she's going throughout Winterfell basically being like, this needs to change, this needs to change. Why isn't there leather on that armor? Why isn't this thing happening over here? And so you're just seeing how much she has learned, because she spent so much time around Lady Olenna and Cersei and Ramsay, and she's been out around all these people. Granted, they're evil, but she's seen how to run a kingdom in some kind of way. This then has an interesting conversation with Littlefinger, where Sansa is talking to him back and forth. She feels like Littlefinger's saying these very obvious things, and then Littlefinger goes on this whole speech where he's talking about how if you're going to protect yourself, you need to be prepared for everything all at once, all the time, so you're never surprised and you always have a backup plan. That's what he's saying to Sansa. That's how she needs to prepare herself if she's going to rule, if she's going to be the person who is seen as a ruler throughout Westeros. So then you have this awkward scene with Bran and Sansa. Bran comes back to Winterfell. Sansa sees him for the first time. Bran's in like full-on robot mode. Like he's full-on three-eyed raven, not showing any emotion. This was a kind of weird scene here. Then it cuts to them having a private conversation, and Bran is basically like, I've been seeing all the things that have happened to you, and they are very graphic. And he explains one to Sansa, and Sansa freaks out about it and runs away. I thought this was a really weird scene. Of all the scenes in this, I feel like this one could have been cut or done a little bit differently, but it didn't really take away from the plot at all. So it'll be interesting to see what Bran's character does going forward. So then we cut back to the Citadel. Jorah's cured. Sam's cured Jorah. It's really awesome to see. He's still got some scars and stuff over his body, but the grayscale is completely and totally gone. So the other Maester is examining Jorah. Finally, it's like, you're free to go. You're completely and totally cured. It has an interesting moment with Sam and Jorah. The only thing that kind of made me really weird about this moment is at the end, Jorah shakes Sam's hand, and I'm like, I don't think I would be like, I know, like, you're a doctor and everything, like, I'm not shaking anybody with grayscale's hand, at least for like a week of knowing that they don't have grayscale anymore. Like, I need some more time. I need like 2 weeks, 3 weeks. Like, I need a second before I'm gonna touch somebody's hands like that. So I'm hoping this doesn't mean Sam's gonna get the disease. I don't think it does. I think that they're just trying to have a moment there. It would be an unnecessary death if they killed Sam. I think that would be, especially like that, I think that would not go well over with fans. Not that any of these writers care about what fans think. So it'll really be interesting to see what happens up to this point. So obviously Jorah now going off to find Daenerys. It'll be really interesting to see how that goes. So I'm looking forward to see, what do you think is going to happen within that reaction? I'm really curious to see if anybody thinks that it's actually going to go really negatively rather than really positively, because she basically sent Jorah off on a fool's errand to try to cure this grayscale. So then they cut to Dragonstone, the war room, and they're trying to figure out what their next move is now that the fleet is destroyed. So Castle Rock is where the Lannisters grew up, and what ended up happening is that Tyrion's whole battle plan is based off the fact that his father built all of Castle Rock and built it up to where it is. It's basically impenetrable, except for one little problem, is that he actually gave Tyrion the job of building the sewer system. So he knows the sewer system. Tyrion built this special area in the sewer system where he could get in and out of, so he could have his own private time with whoever he wanted to have his private time with. So he sends Grey Worm and a few other soldiers into that tunnel, and the rest of the soldiers are outside waiting for Grey Worm to get through that tunnel and open up the main gates. So that ends up happening. Tyrion's describing this the whole entire time, so you feel like they're about to win this battle. But what ends up happening in the end is that Jaime has taken most of their army from Castle Rock and taken it to go take down the Tyrells, because that's a better strategic location. You see Grey Worm realize, oh, there's not enough men here. What is happening? Why did we win so easily? It cuts to him looking out in the sea. The ships that they used to get to Castle Rock are being destroyed again by the Lannister fleet. So that then from there cuts to Jaime walking into the Tyrell's Keep. I cannot remember what that is on the top of my head. I'll put that down on the bottom of the screen over here. So you cut to Jaime walking up to meet Lady Olenna. So they skip the battle here. They don't do the battle. It's unnecessary. The first thing Lady Olenna says when Jaime goes into the room is like, we've never been good fighters, the Tyrells. So it would have been a useless battle for them to show that. And then you see Lady Olenna and Jaime have a back and forth. And this back and forth is very interesting because Lady Olenna basically gets out what she thinks about the entire Lannister family in this scene. Except for Tyrion. She doesn't talk about Tyrion, but every single person. She hits Joffrey. She calls Joffrey the C word. She hits Jaime. He's like, Jaime, Cersei's going to be your downfall. Talks about Cersei like Cersei is this. She's poison. Basically comparing her to the Mad King, as a lot of people think that that's what's happening here. Let me know down in the comments if you think that this is foreshadowing for that. I do. So then they're talking back and forth, and then she's finally like, so how are you going to do it? How are you going to kill me? Are you going to use that sword? And Jaime's like, no. Cersei had a bunch of ideas, but I decided that I was going to do this in my own specific way. Pulls out a bottle of poison, which seems to be similar to the poison that Joffrey got killed with. Pulls out the bottle of poison, pours it into some wine. Lady Olenna drinks the wine, and then ends up telling Jaime that I am actually the one that killed Joffrey, and it was not Tyrion. In like the most savage of savage moves ever. Like, I didn't think anybody was going to beat Cersei. I didn't think anybody was going to outdo Cersei in this show, in this episode, but killed it. It was so good. It was so great. I was literally so upset that she was about to die, and then she was just like, boom, mic drop. All right, I'm out. So that was really, really, really awesome ending scene, and that's going to put a lot of pressure between Cersei and Jaime. I'm interested to see what is going to happen there, because obviously Tyrion didn't do it, and Cersei's been blaming Tyrion the whole time and been pissed off, so it'll be really interesting to see what happens there. And that was the very end of the episode. Let me know what you guys think. What you guys' predictions are. I'm really excited to hear what you think down in the comments. Make sure you hit that like button, make sure you hit that subscribe button so you can get new videos. Got other videos coming out this week, so stay tuned for that. I'm thinking a lot of things are gonna happen. This is not my personal theory. This is a theory that I think is epic. So if you don't want to hear this theory, you don't want potential spoilers, even though I can't say that I have any connection or have any idea what's going to happen, but I was watching the Nerdist review yesterday of Game of Thrones, and one of the guys on there, I cannot remember his name. So this is his theory about how he thinks Cersei is going to die. Okay, Jaime actually is going to get killed during battle. So he's going to get killed during battle, which I could absolutely see happening. The Kingslayer getting killed in a huge battle, maybe by like a Jon Snow or something, that could be a very interesting thing. But then with that, what he said was, he dies, Arya steals Jaime's face, and then Arya ends up killing Cersei with Jaime's face. So I thought that that was a really cool theory. Let me know down in the comments if you think that's the one theory I want to talk about right now. Let me know down in the comments what you think. Like I said, hit that like button, hit that subscribe button. I'm going to be doing another one of these next week, so stay tuned for that. Got more videos coming out. Stay tuned for that. My name is Oscar Hampton. This is Boldly Nerd. Later days.